This is Cyber Brief. If you care about what's getting broken on the internet, this is your weekly top 5. All 5 of this week's CVEs score in the critical severity range. This is the Cacti edition. This week's headline product, Cacti. Week of June 29, July 5, 2026. Starting at number 5. Number 5. A flawed authentication check in Kestra's open-source workflow platform lets unauthenticated attackers create and execute arbitrary workflows. No credentials required. Kestra is an event-driven orchestration platform. It automates workflows, scripts, and data pipelines for organizations that need tasks to run on a schedule or in response to events. The authentication filter that guards Kestra's API is supposed to require credentials for protected endpoints, but instead of checking the exact path, it checks only whether the URL ends with the word configs, because it's a suffix match rather than a precise check. An attacker can craft any API path whose final segment is configs and walk straight past authentication. Once past that gate, they can create and execute arbitrary workflows without ever supplying a username or password, because Kestra ships by default with script execution plugins, including Shell and Python runners. That workflow execution runs as root inside the Kestra worker container, meaning an unauthenticated outsider can run operating system commands at the highest privilege level the container allows. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because the attack reaches Kestra through its API, which organizations typically expose to internal or external networks to trigger workflows, any system running an unpatched Kestra instance that is reachable over a network could be at risk. No credentials, no special access, and no user interaction are required. An attacker simply needs to reach the API and craft the right URL to gain root-level code execution inside the worker. Anyone using the vendor's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. Up next. Number 4. A crafted HTTP/2 request can slip past AWS's web firewall, potentially bypassing AWS WAF body inspection, a security layer many organizations rely on to filter malicious web traffic. AWS Application Load Balancer, the service that receives incoming web traffic and routes it to your applications, can be paired with AWS WAF, Amazon's web application firewall, to inspect and block dangerous content before it ever reaches your servers. The flaw here involves how HTTP/2, the modern web protocol, allows request data to be split across multiple smaller units called frames. By carefully crafting a request that spreads its body across those frames, a remote attacker could cause AWS WAF to inspect only a fragment of the actual request body, missing whatever malicious payload is hidden in the rest. That means attack content designed to be caught and blocked, things like SQL injection or dangerous command strings, could pass through the firewall unchallenged and land directly in your application. This issue specifically affects setups where HTTP/2 target groups sit behind an ALB with AWS WAF managed rule body inspection active. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Any organization using AWS Application Load Balancer with AWS WAF enabled on HTTP/2 target groups could be exposed. As this flaw can be triggered by a remote attacker sending specially crafted requests over the network, no credentials or user interaction are required. If exploited, this class of flaw allows an attacker to bypass a security control that is often the primary filter standing between the open internet and internal application logic. Anyone using the vendor's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. Halfway there. Number 3. A flaw in how Amazon CloudFront reads incoming web requests could let attackers slip malicious content right past the security filter guarding it. Amazon CloudFront is a content delivery service that sits in front of websites and applications, routing traffic from users around the world. AWS WAF, Web Application Firewall, works alongside it, inspecting incoming requests, blocking anything that looks dangerous, like an injection attack hidden in a request body. The flaw here involves how HTTP/2, a modern web protocol, can split a request body across multiple small chunks called frames. When a request is crafted to fragment its body across those frames in a specific way, the WAF may only inspect part of what arrives, and if the dangerous payload lands in the uninspected portion, it passes right through unchallenged. An attacker exploiting this could potentially slip attack content past a security control that organizations rely on to protect their web applications from known threats. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because this flaw sits at the network layer of a widely used cloud delivery service, any web application running behind Amazon CloudFront with AWS WAF body inspection enabled could have been within reach of a specially crafted request. No user interaction or account credentials would have been needed from an attacker's side. This class of flaw can allow a remote attacker to bypass a security rule set that defenders believe is active and blocking threats. Anyone using the vendor's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. Almost at the top. Number 2. A flaw in Cacti's workflow runner lets any user who can submit a job break out of their container and seize control of the underlying host machine. Cacti's Act Runner is the component that executes automated workflow jobs, the kind that build software, run tests, deploy code inside isolated Docker containers. The isolation is supposed to be the safety boundary. Your job runs in a box, and the host machine stays protected. The failure here is in how that runner hands off configuration options to Docker. When a workflow specifies container options like sharing the host's process namespace or adding elevated system capabilities, the runner passes those options through largely unchanged, only stripping the single privilege flag. That means a user who can submit a workflow can craft job container settings that grant access to host-level namespaces and broad system capabilities. The result, if exploited, is container escape. The attacker's code climbs out of the isolated job environment and runs on the physical or virtual host machine with root-level access. That's full control of whatever machine is running the runner. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because the attack vector details are not fully specified in the available record, the realistic exposure depends on who can submit workflows to a Docker-backed Cacti runner in many organizations. That includes developers, contractors, or anyone with repository access. If exploited, this class of flaw could allow a workflow contributor to escape their sandbox job environment entirely, gaining root-level access to the runner host and any credentials, secrets, or internal systems reachable from it. Anyone using the vendor's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. And the top spot this week? Number 1. A broken sanitization function in Cacti's graphing engine lets an outsider run arbitrary commands directly on the server. Cacti is an open-source framework that organizations use to monitor network performance, collecting metrics, drawing graphs, alerting on faults across infrastructure. At its core is a function called escape command, which is supposed to clean up dangerous characters before any command gets sent to the operating system. The problem, that function does nothing. It simply hands the command back unchanged. So when Cacti builds a command line to generate performance graphs, values pulled from graph templates, including host variable substitutions, flow straight into a shell execution call with no scrubbing at all. An attacker who can influence those template values could inject their own operating system commands into that pipeline. That's the class of flaw known as command injection. And when it reaches a shell execution call unfiltered, it can mean running arbitrary code on the server itself, reading files, modifying data, or establishing a foothold inside the host. No active exploitation is stated in the available facts. Because the attack vector is not fully specified in the advisory, the precise path an attacker would take remains unclear. The underlying flaw sits in graph template processing, which is a core feature of any active Cacti installation. This class of command injection flaw could allow an attacker to execute operating system commands with the privileges of the web server process, potentially giving them control over the underlying host. Anyone using Cacti's products should apply the latest security update to stay protected. That's the top 5 for this week. Whether you're here to triage your patching queue or just to stay sharp on the evolving threat landscape, if this brief added value, hit the like button. It helps the algorithm push this content to more people who care about security. Drop a comment if there's a CVE we should have covered, or one you've already seen in the wild. That's how we build a better watch list together. New Cyber Brief Shorts drop every weekday, and the new Top 5 lands every Thursday afternoon. Until next week. Cyber threats don't wait. Neither should you. Subscribe.